What's going on, everybody? I am Michael Anthony and welcome to the Elevate Critiques. This is a video series where we are going to be critiquing some photos sent in by our community on Facebook. If you guys have not joined yet, go ahead and join using the link down below. My name is Michael. This is my wife, Jennifer.
Hey guys.
Let's go ahead and get into it real quick. We got this first image here. This is from Kristen Lee. We got a couple on the beach. It looks like an engagement shoot. So I'm gonna go through a couple things. Now, all the time when you guys are considering exposure for your photos, you always want to look from corner to corner on the frame and make sure that you are controlling your highlights. If we look in this image here, the top left section, we can see we lost a lot of highlight detail, which was later recovered in post. But more importantly here, rather than just blowing the highlights, it's just making sure that our eyes are going to the brightest part of the photo. If you were to look at this photo and you were to squint, you're gonna see right here, obviously our eyes are gonna go to this spot first, but even after that, then they're gonna go up here to the top right corner of the image. Now, if we look here, we wanna get our eyes to our couple, so that's one of the ways that we can make the lighting in this photo just a little bit better.
I agree with everything that Michael said. The first thing that I see is the upper left-hand side of this image, and I'm not drawn to the couple. As far as anything else goes, their posing is nice. I just wish he had his hand on her waist so that they'd be a little bit more connected. But other than that, it's a pretty nice image.
Yeah, and then one last thing that I want to touch on real quick. Whenever you have a strong horizon line in your photo, there's actually two things here that I think can make this a lot better. First, obviously, make sure you straighten that horizon line. In this instance right here, we could just straighten this a little bit. It's going to make the image a lot better. But also, other than that, it's always a good idea to maybe try to put one of those maybe put that horizon line on one of the thirds, the horizontal thirds in the frame. So if we look here, let me see, let me show you guys real quick. We would want to first straighten this image, something like this, okay? And then what I'm talking about in terms of the horizon would be to move it somewhere around right here. And obviously, in this particular instance, I wouldn't want to crop that much of the photo, although it's not bad because we are getting rid of some of these highlights. But maybe you look at this as a panel crop. So you can do something like a 2-to-1 crop, 2-to-1 ratio. And then you can go ahead and get this landscape format and still be able to maintain some of that that scene, right? And that way we are drawing the eye directly to our couple. We're not showing too much of the sky, not showing too much of the floor, and our eyes are going exactly where they need to be. Next image here is by Anonymous. Okay, it's our first anonymous. We actually had a lot of anonymous submitters today. Usually we don't get any, so this is the first one of quite a few that we got. So we got a cool couple here. I really love the styling of this picture. And when I mean styling, I mean the actual like attire, the theme. I think it's really cool. I know that in the comments or anybody watching this right now, they're gonna be screaming at the screen right now, selective color, right? And there's a place for that. It's not this place, but there is a place for selective color. But we want to be careful with those that type of post-production technique. The reason why is because it's trendy, right? And again, our imagery should be timeless because over time, people have to look back on these photos and we don't want them to look cheesy, right? Now, I'm gonna ignore the selective color for a minute. We're just gonna talk about maybe a couple other things. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about the posing here.
For me, the posing, like I go automatically, I look at him and he's straight on to the camera and his hands are covering
his junk.
They're covering his junk pretty much. And then I'm looking at where he's looking and he's looking down somewhere, but he doesn't look very engaged with her or the camera. He's just kind of just sitting there covering his junk and I don't know. Her pose looks really nice. I just wish his was a little bit more refined.
And I do like how they use the suitcase here to kind of like tie in the theme and also use it as kind of like an Apple box, right? Like a posing prop. Real quick, compositionally, okay? Just watch out, and it's gonna be tough because these aren't full res images. So guys, in the future, please submit full res photos, right? Or at least as high res as you can. So I'm gonna zoom in here and you can kind of see that the brim of the hat is actually coming across the eyes right here. Now you can still see the eyes, and one of the things that the photographer did here that I did like from a lighting perspective was they got that light source down low enough to where it's filling in his eyes, right? We just can't see much of them, but it is filling in there. So just keep in mind, if you guys are using a light, a softbox, whatever it may be, and your subject has a hat, it's really easy to cast a shadow into the eyes right there. So go ahead and lower that light like they did right here and get that light into the eyes. So Other than that, just watch out for that selective color. That's going to be something that, obviously is going to be looked at as a trend. It's already looked at as a trend, but it was popular back in the early 2010s, and we don't want to make imagery for our clients unless they request it like this. That is going to not stand the test of time, right?
And as far as the pose, I know I touched on that, but like maybe if he would have been leaning forward and on his knee and maybe me mugging the camera just like she is, it would have looked a little bit better. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and again, Jen had touched on connection before, right? Connection is extremely important with posing. Posing is a language, it's communication, and you want your subjects in the image to be communicating the same message to the viewer, right? So maybe they're both me mugging the camera, maybe they're looking at each other, but make it in sync with one another, right? The post-production is beautiful right here. I really like the overall color palette of the image. I like the birds. I think they tie everything in. The one thing that I'm looking at in this image that I think can be improved is the posing, right? So I'm gonna zoom into our couple. This is, the Where's Waldo image, right? Where the couple's small in frame, the scene is really big, it's showing off the scenery, which are very good images, by the way, if you're selling large wall prints. This is the type of photo in our studio that sells the best. And I'll kind of talk to you guys about the pose though, because I've learned over the years from my clients what sells and what doesn't, and that's the best judge of what I am going to continue to shoot, right? So I'm gonna zoom in here and we're gonna move down, right? So if you look right here, from the camera's perspective, the bride is completely square with the camera, right? In general, we typically want to turn our couples or our subjects at least 45 degrees one way or the other. And the reason why we do that is because it slims out the couple's or the subject's waist, and it allows you to start creating that S curve from their spine all the way down to their feet. In this instance, she is standing, I can't tell if she's standing flat-footed, but she is completely square up with the camera. You're not making her look as thin as you could through posing, right? So that was one of the things that stood out to me immediately.
Yeah, definitely. You'll never see me pose straight up in the camera. It's not flattering to anybody, really. Then again, I would have probably had them facing each other. If you don't want them facing each other, maybe turn her a little bit more. And the bouquet is like really high, covering her chest. I would have brought that down to kind of show her dress more and show her waist a little bit more.
Here's a really quick posing tip for any bride in a wedding dress, right? General rule, you always want to show the thinnest part of the waist, okay? And this was a trick that was taught to me by a florist, actually. She was in the industry for 40 years. She worked with many photographers, and she told me when a bride's got a bouquet, because they tend to hold them up here, right? Have them bring it down, extend their arms, or bring it down to their waist. And by doing that, you're naturally going to show the thinnest part of the waist, and it's going to make her look more flattering. You're going to see those curves, which are something that we really like. So this is Santorini. It's by Ali Khan. Ali, I have never been to Santorini, but this looks like a dream, right? Oh, she's looking at me. She wants to go to Santorini. We're not going to Santorini anytime soon. The world is ending right now, but when it's done ending and it comes back, we're going to Santorini, right? Okay, so you have a subject on this rooftop. You've got this big red dress. The red and the blue kind of contrast with each other, but there's a couple things I want to point out. In this image, it's going to really boil down to post-production first, and then I'll let Jen get into some of the posing and compositional things here. When we talk about post-production, you guys see this little corner up here. This is the navigator, okay? And one of the ways that you can tell if your tones are uneven in an image is by just looking at this, right? Because what this does is it compresses all the tones together so you can see if you have easy transitions from one side of the image or one color gradation to the other. So when we come in here, we can kind of see right here, you have light fall off from the light right here, and then in the sky, you have a lot of dodging and burning marks that are kind of streaking across the sky into different areas. Now, I don't know if this is the real sky or a sky swap, but there are a couple things here that make me think it was probably swapped out. If we look over here, now I'm looking at it, it probably was swapped out. If we look at, you could see the post-production lines right here. From where it was blended together. And this is why I highly recommend not using any of the newer technology that automatically swaps skies for you. This is the kind of thing that happens all the time. Just make sure you're masking your subjects if you're gonna do this, and then that way you can do it correctly and you can not have any of this bad masking right here, right? When we look over here though, you can see that the sky is blending in to the rooftops, right? You can even see clone marks in these areas right here, a lot of clone marks. And I want you guys to know that while an image on Instagram, this isn't gonna be a big deal, people won't really notice it, right? Unless you're a photographer just hunting for things to talk bad about on other photographers' pictures. No client's gonna notice this, right? But when you print this image large and it goes on the client's wall, this is gonna be extremely noticeable. How do I know? Because I, in the beginning, tried to do some of this stuff. I didn't do it right the first time. Clients noticed, and guess what? I'm reprinting canvases now. So we have to be really, really careful when we're doing post-production, pay attention to these details, and then that way we can make sure that we're avoiding some of these things in the future. But just be real careful about this content-aware fill and this cloning that you guys see here. So Jen, go ahead and address the posing and the dress.
Yeah, I really like this image. It's really pretty. As far as the dress goes, it kind of seems forced. It's almost like somebody is holding the dress. There's no movement. It doesn't look natural. I would add, like if there is wind going, I would have somebody show movement to the dress so it looks like there's wind going, bring it back and forth, just make it look a little bit more natural. I would like to see a little bit more separation between her and the building. She's covering some of the building. Maybe the angle could have been from a lower angle, less of the floor.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about the dress makes sense. Like in this instance, like these techniques with the dress and using them for leading lines, there's a time and a place for them, right? Don't use them just as a technique, just to make a good image. Use them with purpose. Maybe you're creating that leading line. But in this instance, you have a beautiful scene, and this image is about the scene, so that dress is competing with that beautiful scene. And she wore the dress, so work with it, obviously. But in this instance, one of the things that I'm looking at is you have this triangular pattern leading into the center of the frame. You might want to try filling both sides of the frame with that dress, whether you create a swoop through the wind, or you just spread it out into that triangular pattern. Have it mirror that triangular pattern of the corner of the roof right there, that she's walking into. And I do agree with Jen about having a little more separation between her and the building. If we draw a line down the center of a photo, we want to make sure the image is balanced. And right now, all the content is centered on this side, right, as opposed to this side. But this is a beautiful scene. I know the client's going to love the image, and these are just the little things we can do to make them a little bit better. Another anonymous image here. This is pretty, right?
Yeah, I really like this.
This is cool. I don't know where this is, but it looks gorgeous, and it makes me want to go there right now because I'm trapped in quarantine with Jen and Demothy. Demothy, say hi. Hi. He's behind the camera. Okay, so going through this image, couple things. We have a story. We've got the couple walking away from the lighthouse right here. We've got the birds flying. We've got this beautiful sunset. One of the things I think that can make this a little bit better is a little more motion in the pose. Whenever you guys are having people look like they're walking, we want to actually create that motion of them walking. It's very easy to tell when people are kind of static, right? Now, you do have some motion happening here, and it's happening naturally from the wind. You can see it in her hair, right?
Which is nice.
Which is really nice. And this is a great situation to work with. And now, I don't know if her dress is bustled or not, but if it's not, in these instances, obviously you want to let that dress out. But here, one of the things we can do is we can actually have them start right here, walk a few steps this way, and then we can go ahead and really tell that story of them walking on this windy day out of scene. The other thing I recommend, and this is just a recommendation right here, whenever you have movement in a scene, because our eyes read left to right, you might want to consider flipping this around so that they're walking onto the next page of the album per se right here.
I like this image. I just, like he said, I wish there was a little bit more movement, like maybe his feet would have been staggered, like he was actually walking forward and she's following him, but it's really pretty.
Now, question for you. Do you think that we need that much sky in the photo? So let's do a panel crop on this too.
Yeah, I really like it like that too.
See, I think this is a lot stronger, right? And for me, the reason I think that is because we are eliminating elements in the image that don't add to the overall story, right? In the sky in this instance, there's a beautiful sky, but most of that beauty is happening in that color transition here from magenta to blue, right? I assume this is taken at dusk. So I think maybe we crop that down and it mirrors an album spread. I think it looks really good, but overall, this is a beautiful image.
I like it both ways.
Yeah, well done, well done. This is an image by Ricardo Perez. We have a maternity photo out in the snow, which looks beautiful. You guys get to go to all these cool places. I haven't been anywhere for like...
What? We just went to Tahoe.
I know, but it's been like a month now, and I want to get out of the freaking office. I'm done.
All right.
Go ahead.
I really like this image. It's really pretty. I kind of wish I would have seen a little bit more of her face. She's just looking straight forward. Maybe she could have looked down at her shoulder. Yeah, and then as far as everything else goes, the section at the top, I kind of wish I wasn't looking at that, like above the mountain.
So they can't see your hand, so I'm gonna do this real quick. What you're saying is like right here?
Yeah.
Right here.
Maybe
right?
you could have gotten down a little lower, but yeah.
For me, looking at this photo real quick, the one thing that stands out to me is the lighting, right? And let me explain. When we position skin tones or flesh tones close to other flesh tones, in this case you have the weeds right here, it's very similar to the color of her face, right? So those two things are competing with each other. So I highly recommend separating those things in the future if you can. This is kind of a cool moment, like you're shooting through the bush right here. It's kind of candid, if you will. And you know, what we could do here to kind of maybe make this better is take another angle, maybe put her on this side and put her face up against that dark background, and we can get that really beautiful lighting, making her stand out on that background, right? The other thing is the tree here is okay, but it is literally dividing the center of this image, right? So maybe what we do in the future is we find an angle somewhere that is gonna give us a composition that looks something like this, where we don't have so much of that tree cutting the image in half, right? The last thing I would recommend here is to add a little off-camera flash, right? Or a little bit of flash. And the reason I say that is because if we look here again, reset our crop, brightest part of the image, I want all the viewers at home to just squint and look at this real quick. Brightest part of the image is this area right here, okay? So we want to darken that area down a little bit, add some flash on our subject, make her the brightest part of the image, get our viewers' eyes directly to that subject immediately. So now we got another image here, another anonymous photo. First of all, I gotta say, I love photos taken at this time of day, at nighttime. I think the scene is beautiful. I love that you found the bokeh in the background. This was shot with an 85 at 1.4. Great choice of lens and aperture for this particular area right here. I'm gonna talk real quick about lighting, and then I'll let Jen go ahead and talk about the pose. Whenever we are lighting our subjects from one side, right, we typically want to make sure that at least the bride's face is gonna get lit, right? If you have to make a choice. In this instance, I would say we want both of their faces lit, and what we would wanna do for that is to move that light source closer around to the front so that her face isn't in shadow. Now, if you look here, I highly recommend when you're working with the softbox to not point that softbox directly at your subject. Instead, I recommend pointing it a little bit above your subject. And the reason for that is because the brightest part of a softbox is gonna be right in the center. So that's where the hot spot is gonna be. So if you look right here at this image, what's the brightest part of this image? So if I go ahead and hit J, and I start to brighten the photo up, you can see the first thing that clips is her hand, right? And that's because that softbox is pointed directly at the subject, where you have the edges feathering off around the top of them and the center of that softbox hitting onto the hand and the body first, okay? So move that thing up a little bit, be a little more precise with the control, and then you'll have better light fall off on the bottom of the body. And then one of the other things that you can do to make sure that they both get good light is you can actually place her back into him, right? And then have them both turn their face into the light, right?
Mm-hmm. I actually like how they look very connected. The one thing I don't like is that one hand that she has just kind of resting on his shoulder, just kind of, that's the first thing I see. It's like, it's just kind of dangling there. Maybe she could have put it on his head, on the back of his head.
Like pull him in?
Like pulling him in, yeah, instead of just kind of hanging there.
This is an example. We were talking earlier about having that dress or that material spread out throughout the whole bottom of the image. This is kind of an example of that. Now, you've got good composition here, but there is something that I want to address here, and that's immediately the pose, right? It's the first thing that I look at. She looks very flat-footed right now, and she looks like she's just got her hand right on his face like this. If you look from the back of her head all the way down to her butt, complete straight, right? And what we want in this instance is we want a curve. We want to show that curve in her body. Not only does it make them look more connected, it also makes her look more flattering, right? So we can get there by just asking him to dip her over slightly. And what that will do is it's actually going to take the hair, let it hang off of her back, and then emphasize this curve in her body right here. And that's going to make this image look a lot better.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then the other thing from a composition standpoint, again, we're pulling on the train right here, right? And you can see it's forced all the way to the edge of the frame right here, okay? This side is just kind of falling down. So what I would recommend is if you're gonna pull this side up as well so that they match. It's gonna give us a little bit of a more smooth composition. But other than that, the light looks really good. She's got good light on her face. I like the composition. I think actually now that I'm looking at this, a vertical composition might have been a little bit better here. And I'm gonna go back to let's just say like a 2/3. And the reason I say that is because you lose that doorway on the right-hand side of the frame right here. Oops. So if we do something like this, or even a square, like a 1-to-1, you lose that door on the right-hand side right there, and it makes a more simplistic composition, which I think generally will look a little bit better, right? This image is by Bernie Griffin. I call him Bernie.
Yeah.
Bernard Griffin.
It's really cute. I think, again, they look very relaxed. And I think when you want to take a flattering picture of somebody, they're not always gonna be relaxed. They should look relaxed, but they should look better. Like, he looks like he's sitting how he would normally sit, and it's not flattering to him. I would have him maybe turn his body a little bit more, or like lean in. I love how she has her hand on his shoulder and she's looking at him. Maybe if he were looking back at her, maybe this is a candid moment, and that's why, but we always can give direction, even if it's a candid moment, to make them look more flattering.
Question for you. Do you think that the composition and the style of edit, do you think it suits the expression?
No, like if they're laughing, they're happy, and then everything else is really moody. So it doesn't match.
Bernie, this is like, this expression right here are the best-selling images. I think these are the ones.
Oh, they're gonna love this, because as soon as you see that, you get happy, and you're like, oh, they're so cute.
And I have no doubt that during this shoot, you probably took that like more pose, more stoic expression in this exact scene, right? And I think this scene with this edit in this this edit, composition, I think it's better suited for that like more moody, dramatic photo, right? But this expression, this moment that you have right here, I would have loved to see you punch in on this, maybe a black and white moment, have them connect with each other. I just think it's an awesome photo. These type of moments and expressions, they are the images that fill the gallery, whereas the overall scene here with a more stoic expression, that's the image that the client might put on the wall, on the cover of their album to tell the story of the day. And I really am a big believer that you have to do both. You got to have moments, you have to have candid shots. They're not what we show on our website, but they are full in our client galleries. That is what we use primarily. But overall, just going into the image here, I think the expression is amazing. Like Jen said, the pose, because he's kind of like sitting more relaxed. He's leaning backward, which brings the belly a little bit closer to the camera.
I didn't want to say that, but that's what I...
Why are you being so nice? This isn't the moment to be nice, Jen. No, I'm just playing. Guys, what I want you to do is just look at the overall scene, match the scene to the expression in the image. And those two things, when they work together, it's gonna make an overall image. But this is a great image. I know the clients are gonna love it. So we got another image here by Anonymous, and this is probably a different Anonymous. I don't know which one this is. But we got a really cool scene right here. I mean, this is just like beautiful, right? Now, from a tonality perspective, it does look very bridal. So this is an example of how you can kind of mix that dramatic look with that very like brighter, more ethereal tones. And those things can come together. Not every dramatic image has to be moody and dark, because a lot of clients don't like that, not all the time. Sometimes they do, some scenes it works in, but not all the time. But this is a good example of how you can maintain bridal tones and still have that kind of like epic photo, right? Now, if we look at this picture again, balance is the one thing that I'm gonna look at
more that way.
From a compositional standpoint, right? You've got content on this side of the photo, right? And then over here, it's all empty. So if we could adjust our camera's angle, maybe bring our photographer come to the left just a little bit, bring her into this area. Now she balances the composition with the buildings on this side, okay? Now, again, highlight control, one of the things we wanna be real careful of. I love the tonality, but again, we're losing some highlights in this area right here. We're also looking at this as the brightest part of the photo, and it looks like she's lit by sunlight right now, which is fine, but then we want to, at least in post-production, burn this area down a little bit so that it's not so bright, right? Yeah. What do you think about the pose?
I feel like she looks beautiful. She looks really pretty, and she's gonna love this. But she's just standing there. She's just standing in the middle of this beautiful scene. I'd like to see her maybe do something. If this was like a tight portrait, I'd be like, oh, it fits it. But since there's a beautiful scene, like maybe she can be overlooking, just give her like something to do.
Walking to the edge, right?
Or
maybe
holding her dress. Yeah.
A series of photos of her walking to the edge will give this image a little bit of a story, right? Remember, we're always, in these more dramatic shots, it's always a good idea to try to tell some sort of a story, right? Because that becomes part of that album, like we talked about a few images back. So we got another image here by Ali Khan, and man, dude, I love this location. Where is this?
I don't know.
That is dope. Okay, looking at this photo real quick, guys, again, horizontal lines. Any strong horizontal line in the image, make sure that we are make sure that we are straightening everything out. And the last thing I want to talk about on this photo here is going to be the highlights. If you look, zoom in right here, the highlights on her face don't match the highlights on her arms right here because of some dodging and burning. And if we look here, we look like we have just a big spot of highlight here on her nose and underneath her eyes right here. And from dodging and burning perspective, that's fine, but they are a little hot. So pull that back just a little bit. And then the last thing I think we need to do is maybe move a little bit of this composition over so that she fills up more of that frame and we don't have such a negative space on this side, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, she looks really pretty. I feel like maybe if she had her hands in her hair, like, because nobody just puts their hands right here. I'm just being picky now because I think it's a really pretty image. Maybe if she had her hands like in her hair, like giving it some movement.
It's not a bad idea. Yeah, I like it. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed these critiques. We are going to do these weekly, and we're going to get to the next set of the images from this set on next week's video. So thank you guys so much for checking us out, and we will catch you on the next one.